Welcome to the video tutorial which accompanies the printed sewing instructions for the boho dress. You'll find the link in the description below if you haven't already downloaded your pattern. Follow the cutting layouts given and note that in the larger sizes, if your print allows it, you will use much less fabric, placing your sleeve across the grain as shown here. It's a good idea to label your centre backs and fronts to avoid confusion later, as the waistlines on both are different. Cut your fusings for your neck facings and cuffs as blocks as written on the pattern pieces. Overlock the centre edges of your front and back bodices. Place them right sides together and sew at 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch down the centre fronts and backs. Press the seams open. Place the bodices right sides together, matching the shoulder seams, and pin. Sew at 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch. Press the seams towards the back. Press the fusing onto your blocks on both the cuffs and neck facings. Now cut out the original patterns. Pin the back and front neck facings right sides together at the shoulders. Sew together at 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch. And press the seams open. Overlock or zigzag the outer edge of the facing. Now pin the facing to the neck of the bodice, right sides together. Make sure to match the shoulder seams, centre back and pivot point. Just a reminder, when turning at the pivot point, make sure the needle hits right in the middle of the seam underneath to give a nice, neat finish. Cut to, but not through, the V of the seam allowance and clip all the curves. Press the seam allowances and facing away from the bodice. You're going to undersew the seam allowance to the facing at 2 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch, getting as close to the V as possible. So once you've sewn the seam allowance to the facing here at 2 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch, you're going to, if you have a sheer fabric, it doesn't matter with this one because you won't see the seam allowance through the other side, but sometimes when you have a sheer fabric or a light coloured fabric like white or cream, it can show through and look a little bit ugly. So you can trim away the excess seam allowance up until this sewn and this undersewing here. Mind, and please be careful because it is quite easy to end up nicking the facing, so I do like to sort of do it like this. Yeah. Sort of keep that facing away as you trim. Turn the facing to the inside and press and pin evenly around the neck. Now you're going to top stitch the facing down just on the edge of the facing on the overlocking all the way around, making sure to keep the width even between the stitching and the neck edge. So quite often when I'm sewing I have a little audience. This is Huey, Dewey, Louie and Jack, our resident teenage ducks. They were orphaned, they seem to be orphaned quite young, so we've been feeding them for a while now, haven't we dears? Yeah? Yep, that's right. My finger's absolutely delicious. Yeah, well we'll get you something in a minute, alright? But yeah, this is the zoo. Next, grab your sleeves. Sew 2 lines of stitching using a long stitch length between the front and back notches. Sew one at 5 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch and one at 1 centimeter 3/8 of an inch. Do not secure the ends so we can gather them later. To gather the sleeve heads, grab 2 of the threads only as shown here. Gather towards the middle from both sides. You need to gather evenly to fit the corresponding notches on your bodice. Sew the sleeves at 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch. You'll achieve the best result by sewing directly onto the 1 centimeter gathering line. And don't forget to turn back that stitch length. Overlock or zigzag the raw edges. Press the seams towards the bodice. Now we need to top stitch the seam allowances down at 2 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch. On the sleeve end, just as we did with the sleeve head, we are going to sew 2 lines at 5 millimeters, 1/4 of an inch and 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch with a long stitch length. Gather the sleeve end to match the length of the cuff. Leave about 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch ungathered at the end to help when sewing the side seams. To prepare the cuffs, press them in half wrong sides together. Then turn each side in again 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch. Press in half again. Unfold cuff and with right sides facing, pin cuff to the sleeve end. Sew cuff onto the sleeve at 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch, but it is best to sew with the gathers facing up, sewing on the 1 centimetre gathering line. Press the seam allowances and cuffs away from the sleeve, giving a crisp line at the sewn edge. Now for the skirts. Note, front skirts are higher at the centre front and lower at the centre back. Put skirts right sides together and sew the centre backs at 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch and overlock or zigzag the raw edges. Press the seams to one side. Adjust to a long stitch length again. Sew gathering stitches as we have before at 5mm or 1/4 of an inch and 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so now that I've put the gathering stitches in, I'm going to gather from this end to the middle and from this end to the middle. And I'm going to do it so that it matches the back bodice and the sleeve at those corner points there. Don't forget to do this with your front skirt and bodice as well. Just a quick reminder to leave about 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch ungathered at each end to make sewing the side seams easier. Pin the skirt to the bodice with right sides together, front and back. Just a reminder to turn your stitch length back. Again with the gathered side up, sew on the 1 centimetre gathered line to attach the skirts to the bodices. Pull the gathers out and away as you sew. Overlock or zigzag the raw edges. Press the seam allowances towards the bodice. Sew the seam allowances to the bodice at 2mm or 1/8 of an inch as shown here. Do this to the front piece and back piece. Here is how your dress will look. Flip it over right sides together. Pin it at the side seams, taking care to match notches and seams. The cuff and waist seam in particular should be carefully matched. If you prefer, you can do a tacking stitch through the seams so they won't shift while sewing. Then sew down the cuff, side seams of the sleeve and skirt at 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch. Overlock or zigzag the raw edges. To complete the cuffs, turn over the first pressed line and then again at the middle to match the sewn line and close off the cuff. Pin it so you can just see the sewn line underneath. This way it will act as a guide to keep your sewing even on the front and back. Sew at 2mm or 1/8 of an inch around the cuff as shown here. Once you have established your skirt length, press the hem up 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch and then over again the same amount. And finally, sew at 2 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch at the top edge of the hem. And here it is, the final product. Easy to wear, and the curved waistline adds interest and a nice graceful line to the arch of the back. If you prefer a mini length, it looks just as cute, super cool and easy to throw on for the coming summer. Each time I decide to make a new pattern, I also just indulge myself and make what I feel like. And I've always wanted to make an awesome handbag, and also have a go at sewing with leather. I've been checking out different shapes and designs, and I'll be working on something very soon. You'll be able to use leather or any other alternative, easier fabric to deal with. But until then, keep sewing and creating and live your bespoke life.